Hi, I'm Ali Jackson-Jolley. I'm here with Lauren Cortiñas, who is the Chief Client Officer for Chemistry Cultura, where she works with major brands and partners, including the NFL, working to create more of a voice and space for communities of color and specifically the Latina community. Lauren, welcome and thanks for being here with us.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me, Ali.
So first I'm going to ask you just to sort of describe, you're the Chief Client Officer, but what does that mean and what you do in your role?
Sure. Great question. It's actually a brand new role with our agency, which I'm very excited to take on and honored to be given the opportunity to just continue doing the great work that we do at Chemistry Cultura. I've been working in this agency capacity for the last 13 years, always very hyper-focused on helping brands engage best with the US Latino demographic. So it's obviously a very deep passion of mine. And, starting with the agency years ago as an account manager, rising through the ranks to group director, and then account supervisor, SVP, and now Chief Client Officer, just really speaks to the growth model that our agency boasts and the different mobility paths that we like to offer our teammates over the courses of their careers. So this particular role really blends the strategic marketing and comms experience that I have. So I continue to work day to day with the various client portfolio that the team manages, but also dabbling a bit in how to mentor the team more, provide professional development opportunities for them, as well as just being a great ambassador for the work that we do with just new folks that want to work with us, or speaking with folks like you and Forbes, just trying to up the ante on the awareness piece of the work and why this demographic is so very important.
Yeah, so you said a couple of things that really interest me. One is you talked about strategically engaging this community. That's a really nuanced community with different cultures and generational differences. How do you speak and engage such a vastly nuanced community?
I love this question, Ali, because it just speaks to the fabric and the colors of the communities that we serve day to day. I've had the pleasure of living in various cities in this country where the Latino demographic and the cultures they represent take on new life everywhere you go. So being born and raised in Massachusetts, the Latino demographic there might skew a little more Caribbean, Puerto Rican, Dominican. Then moving to Miami and living there for 15 years, it's kind of a melting pot of all these different Latin American cultures. But in the most recent years, in addition to the vast Cuban demographic there, you're seeing an influx of Colombian, Venezuelan, and others from the Caribbean as well. And living then in California and now in Arizona, I'm delighted to learn more about the Mexican American population, their roots, as well as Central Americans and beyond. So what I love about the work that we do at Chemistry Cultura is really working with brands to educate them on the nuances of each of the regional parts of this country and what that means to how they best engage and market to them, right? So a Mexican American living in East LA looks and behaves very different than someone living in Texas, even though they share Mexican heritage. The music they listen to, the foods that they eat, everything is highly nuanced, and they're proud of that. And I think, back in the day, and I still get hit with these questions frequently, like what is Latinx versus Latino or Latina, and what does that mean if you're Latino? To be quite honest with you, it doesn't mean anything unless you personally believe it does. So in my work and in the communities that we speak to day in, day out, they much prefer being referred to as Mexican American or Colombian or Ecuadorian as opposed to Latino or Latina. But they're not opposed, if you're speaking in general terms, to be referred to as Latinos or Latinas or Hispanics. But I think it just, it begets the point that it's important to look at the individual and just try to be honest and true to how they identify themselves and be mindful of that as you're marketing to them.
Yeah, and can you educate us a bit or, share some light on how the differences in the generational divide? I would imagine that speaking to the younger generation may be much different than speaking to the more, I like to call us more seasoned generation, or, first generation immigrants versus those who have been here for quite a while. So talk to us about the generational divide and maybe educate me how I should think about this.
Sure. Love this. So it's interesting because, a lot of marketers will come to us, to engage our experience and our knowledge on this topic. And a lot of them, especially as years have gone by, are very quick to say, I don't know enough about this, and I'm looking to you to help me understand. So before we engage in any marketing strategies or creative or anything like that, it's simply, this is how it looks. And it's highly nuanced. It's not just, oh, you're from Mexico, so you're what everyone in the US that's Latino looks like. Absolutely not. So we actually have a chart, and I'm happy to share it with you if it's helpful, that kind of goes into the multi-generational nature and acculturation levels of Latinos and Latinas living in this country today, and how that contributes to their behavior patterns and their consumer trends, right? So a more, say, older generation Hispanic that lives in this country, whether they're recently arrived or they've been here a long time, could largely favor speaking Spanish predominantly at home and on the streets with friends and family. They happen to be high consumers of Facebook and TikTok nonetheless, even though they're part of an older generation, but they're very tech savvy and they like to, they value word of mouth opinions and perspectives from friends and folks around them. Whereas sort of a Gen X or a millennial generation, they tend to have, they call them kind of the 200 percenters, right? So they have 1 foot here in the US, yet 1 foot still back in the country of origin that they resonate with. And they embody the cultural nuances of both. So in some cases, you'll see that they're largely bilingual, bicultural. They might speak Spanish at home or with older relatives. And in some cases, they may even be raising their children to be bilingual because it's important to them that they keep that language in the family. But also they're conducting business every day in very proper English, attending American schools, learning English, reading, writing. They're just like you and me. And so it's important to note that they're very proud of their roots, proud of their culture, and they want to preserve that. But at the same time, they're very much part of the American fabric as well. The younger set, the Gen Zs, which is particularly appealing to me because our agency last year released a research study dedicated to Gen Z Latinos. And not unlike their general market Gen Z counterparts, very tech savvy, super high consumers of social media and anything online, but also very interested in creating almost a new brand and a new culture for themselves and for their generation. It's not to say a disassociation with those that have come before, but more like, I want to create something that I can call my own, right? And so the patterns, the jobs and the different things that they're doing, the trends that they're setting with the music they're listening to, acts like Peso Pluma, Bad Bunny, and others that are coming down, Becky G. I mean, they're aspiring to really great things, but they're not wed to any one culture or any one notion that really represents their Latino culture. They're kind of making it their own.
Oh, I love that. And how about, this is a really broad question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We know that there are these large gaps in the media, around the Latina community. What is the biggest thing that you would say mainstream media is getting wrong or missing about this community?
Absolutely. In fact, I was just doing some research yesterday on this notion of media deserts, right? And I think we're feeling it in the media across the board right now, but no more so than during a year like 2024 when it's a presidential election year. Like, access to information is becoming more and more disparate, more and more scattered, more and more difficult to access, especially for underserved populations and communities, right? So what does that mean for a Latino in this country today, especially with, this consumer group comprising nearly 20% of the population in this country and growing? I mean, 1 out of every 3 or 4 births, I think, is a Latino child. There is a discrepancy between growing up in a community in rural North Carolina where your parents are working and not having a Spanish language news station or paper to get information. Whether it's about the election or about a construction development happening in your backyard, there is a real gap between them getting access to information. And that's a shame. And, sadly, we're seeing a lot of these sort of mom and pop local serving community publications closing their doors because they simply don't have the bandwidth or the financing to support the operation, right? And so it's a very sad state of affairs for media in general serving this Hispanic population. There are certainly some outlets that are doing very well, serving sort of that millennial, Gen Z set that is largely bilingual, bicultural. So they can publish news in English, publish robust stories in English, and this demographic still will be drawn to them. But they're still leaving a gap with those that still might prefer to consume information in Spanish, right? So I think it's really incumbent upon all of us, frankly, as consumers of media, and in my case, as a huge supporter of press, to ensure that opportunities for rising Latino and Latina journalists continue to present themselves. We need to really double down on fellowship work, scholarships, supporting universities and institutions that are training and giving those hopes and dreams a chance for this population, because they're eager. They're eager to work for the USA Today's and Forbes of the world in English, but representing their communities with nuance and relevance and authenticity that I think is so often lacking. So it's a very big passion of mine. I'm sure you see it just by my hand movements, but I'm excited and eager to try to help in some regard to bridge that gap.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So we're almost out of time. I wanted to circle back to the fact that the NFL is one of your larger clients, and actually, I'm going to give my producer credit for this because she said to me, the thing that comes to mind is that football doesn't always mean football depending on your culture and where you're from. So let me ask you, as you're serving this community, trying to help the NFL better engage the Latina Hispanic community, how do you bridge this gap that sometimes football means American football and sometimes it actually means what we think of as soccer?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, I take it as more of an opportunity instead of a challenge. We tend to, with the NFL, use a lot of humor to bring light to the often, misinterpreted football versus football notion, right? And I'm not sure how much you know about sports, Ali, but there is a lot of borrowed credibility that has become very popular among major league sports today, whereby you have a hockey player that in his or her off time golfs, or you have a baseball player that when they're not on the field, pitching, they actually love soccer. And so there's an opportunity there without competition. I mean, frankly, sport is something that's a great equalizer and unifies all of us in this country and beyond. So I don't, gone are the days where like, oh, I'm a baseball player and I can't market to soccer players. No, that's long gone. Now it's how can we, rising tide raises all ships, tap into the benefits of both and attract wider audiences, right? So there's a marketing tactic that they call game versus game, right? Where you're taking, say, this most recently in Vegas for Super Bowl, we just, have this partnership with La Liga, which is one of the premier European soccer leagues in the world, probably the most followed of all. And Real Madrid had a few players actually come to Super Bowl and have, we were at the media center and they were doing interviews with various American NFL football players. And there was just a lot of friendly banter back and forth, watching Tyreek Hill like kick a soccer ball or seeing Iker Casillas like throwing a football. I mean, those are content opportunities that really resonate with our fans and that we love to make noise about. So it's not as much about, one game versus the other. It's more about how can we celebrate the shared passion of fandom that is exuded by both, right? And so sport is a great passion of mine. I think for Hispanics and Latinos in general, we talk about passion points a lot: food, family, music, entertainment. Sport is probably the number one. So if you're a recently arrived immigrant to this country and you're trying to look for ways to, I hate the word assimilate because I'm all about preserving one's roots and culture. But if you're looking for a way to adopt new traditions into your family, look no further than sports. And I think the NFL has done a fantastic job resonating with this population. It is now the number one sport of choice among Latinos in this country, which I don't think a lot of people realize. Baseball, because of the numbers of players that are part of their fabric that are largely Latino, I just don't think for some reason they're showing the numbers of fandom and growth as the NFL is right now. And I think it's largely attributed to the NFL really trying to transcend the X's and O's of the game on the field and really tell stories that can resonate with different folks, whether it's, bringing in Bad Bunny or J Balvin to perform at their annual kickoff concert, to storytelling around recently drafted players like in their rookie year sporting the Puerto Rican flag on their backs as they win the Super Bowl, which is what Isaiah Pacheco did last weekend. Like, those are images that stay with fans and with consumers and really mean something. And so I love the fact that the NFL is not shying away from it. They're actually elevating those storylines, bringing them to the surface, and doing an amazing job. So I think, the challenge is for more of sports to follow the lead and do the same, but it's really exciting to watch.
Yeah, well, you are definitely speaking my language. I could talk and hear experts in the area talk about creating, space for different voices and telling different stories all day, but we're out of time. So I want to thank you for being here with us. And look, I really look forward to keeping the conversation moving.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ali. It was a pleasure.
Take care.